It's the Locked On Flyers podcast for Thursday, October 19th, your daily dose of Flyers news, analysis, and high quality content that is really intrigued about how this matchup against the Oilers is going to go.
Yeah, I don't know if I could look at just statistics.
Yeah, we'll get into that and what early season stats mean, preview that matchup against Edmonton, plus check in with some of our Flyers prospects, all on today's show.
You're Locked On Flyers, your daily podcast on the Philadelphia Flyers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey there, and thanks for making Locked On Flyers your first listen every day. I am Rachel Donner. You can find me on the app formerly known as Twitter at rmiriam. I'm here, as always, with Russ Cohen, who's on all your favorite social media apps at Sportsology, and we are at Locked On Flyers pretty much anywhere you look on social media, Instagram, Threads, Blue Sky, Twitter. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook, official sportsbook of Locked On. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get 200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn to get started. You can subscribe or follow us for free over on YouTube or on the SiriusXM app. Anywhere you listen to podcasts, subscribe to get our latest episode as soon as it's available here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Well, Russ, still, coming down a little bit from the high of the home opener win against Vancouver. Also very excited for that Phillies win that turned out to be pretty monster as well.
That makes one of us.
All right. So just catching up with the Flyers and, looking at the lineup, because we were genuinely, a little surprised that Morgan Frost was out of the lineup. And we know for a fact that the Oilers are going to be icing a much stronger lineup than the Canucks did. So what are they going to do here? I think that's like a big question going into this next game against Edmonton. What we know now is that Rasmus Ristolainen is still on IR, so he's not likely to play over the next probably game or two at the very least, from what they've been saying. And it leaves a little mystery, I think, on the blue line, because Zamula did play very well and should, in theory, check back into the lineup. But the way they've been setting things up in practice, Nick Seeler was with Emil Andre in pairings, and that leads me to believe that Seeler and Andre are going to check into this game, which could mean Zamula is out.
So if I'm going to be a lawyer here, I'm going to just go with the circumstantial evidence. First one is Nick Seeler's never the lead in the lineup. Okay, check. Mark Stahl, who was supposed to be getting rest, according to John Tortorella, has not yet and doesn't seem like he's going to be. And then the third part is they just seem to be rotating the young guys on the blue line. Until further notice, that's what it looks like to me.
Right. And, what John Tortorella said after practice yesterday is that he really likes what he's seen from Zamula, but he's not ready to say, oh, he's earned a permanent place in, the starting lineup here, but he's overwhelmingly, positive about what Zamula has done so far. But, it's only 3 games in. We don't have a true pattern to look at as of yet. And so, you could devil's advocate this and say, well, he's just trying to do a rotation for a set amount of time, and then he'll make some more hard and fast decisions. But based on what we were told preseason, like putting Mark Stahl in for 18 minutes a game isn't exactly what the plan was, right?
No, and I get that they've won 2 games. I think he's been okay, but I've seen guys skate around him pretty easy at times. In the half-court game, he's pretty good. I mean, Seeler, has shown some good toughness like he does. I don't know if he's shown great defense, but okay. So, but neither of those guys could ever come out of the lineup. Like that's the message I'm getting at the moment. And that's fine for the coach. It shouldn't be fine for the organization, but we'll see. That's going to be a battle. I believe that's going to be a battle for a portion of the year.
I do too. And I kind of go back and forth as well because, looking at a team like the Oilers with all that offensive firepower, we're going to talk about that in the next segment. I can understand why a gut instinct would be to put Mark Stahl in the lineup because he's a veteran. He's played against these guys for a long time. They're really tough competition. So you want that veteran presence there. But at the same time, like Zamula's got the size and he's got the skill and he's got to learn to play against the top competitions. So, and he just got his first goal. So why not reward him with the opportunity to show what he can do up against those, a team like the Oilers?
Yeah, I mean, and I know and Tortorella made a point of talking about him like the way he's clearing the puck on the boards, but like, is he really the only one doing that? No, we see others doing that. So it's like, that if you take away that first goal, right, the importance of that first goal and kind of like probably surprising Vancouver a little bit with that, what does that game look like? I don't know. I can't tell you because, you don't always score on a penalty shot. So I don't know what, so that I don't know how you could take him out of the lineup. Like, I don't know what you could say to say, yeah, you look pretty good, but get up in the box. There's more for you to learn. Like, I don't understand the strategy in it.
Yeah, I think it's a very interesting question, and we'll see what ends up happening with the lineup tonight. On the forward side of things, I think there was a question, obviously, as to why you sit Morgan Frost in those circumstances. And, if you have to sit somebody to get him back in the lineup, why does it have to be Tyson Forster or Bobby Brink? Based on how they played, because I think, both of them have had pretty strong starts to the season, although Brink probably has the flashier start to the season. And
I
I
don't
think
think so. I think Forster has been better. I mean, I think he's been more, solid than Brink. Again, I think Brink's overmatched being
sure.
in that top line for sure. And I don't think that's the best thing for him.
Right. And that's why I said flashier.
Yeah.
Because I think you maybe have noticed Brink a little bit more, but as far as like their actual play, I think it's closer than you would think.
Yeah.
But Torts has said, if one of those guys is sat, it doesn't necessarily mean that he doesn't recognize that they've played well. It's just whatever rotation he's got in mind. And that leads me back to that theory, right? That he just has this rotation set for X number of games at the beginning of the season, and he's not going to waver from it, just no matter what performance says.
So, I mean, basically, no young player has a chance to play on the fourth line this year. Unless there's an injury, it ain't happening, right? Are we in agreement on that?
I mean, I think so. They love
Yeah.
this line. Now, to be fair, they are getting like the right number of minutes that a fourth line should have. They're hovering around 10, 11 minutes, depending on, some of them are getting extra PK time for sure. But I think that, he's using them accurately as a fourth line should be used, and they have good chemistry. So
But they
it's
are
just
taking some penalties. Hathaway took
yeah.
one that was kind of a lazy penalty, and we're trying to watch like Delorier kind of like dangle, which was, not going to ever really amount to anything. And so, okay, if it's 11 minutes, I could live
It
with it.
happens once a season, Russ. I believe
Okay,
he gets to dangle once a
that's fine.
season.
But it's 11 minutes, and I can live with that, except you do have guys in the minors like Tanner Lucinski that it's hard to talk me out of if you're not putting him at center because you love Paling, that he can't play some time on the fourth line or at least get tried out again on it. So especially with Paling being there now, like that's a lot different than last year. But will that opportunity come up? I don't know. And I don't think you can play Luzinski anywhere else in the lineup as an example.
Yeah, I think that's a fair point. And, about Morgan Frost, I think that John Tortorella is doing what he does, and he's like, show me what you got now. What you did in the past doesn't really factor as much
Well, the past was
until
preseason.
you
He was great in preseason. That's the past to me. That's not a lot of
right,
past. That's just a couple of weeks ago. And he
right.
had one turnover in a game where I've seen some other guys with turnovers who were still playing. So again, when they showed him on camera at the beginning, he was not happy. Like he couldn't hide it. And I don't blame him. I mean, it's a shock probably for him that he didn't get in that game. And so everybody noticed, right? So you look at it and you say, okay, when is he going to get in again? I'm not sure. If he does great, everybody says Torts did the right thing. And if he, kind of like is the same, then everybody's going to be like, who knows? There's a feeling, and I have this feeling that, Morgan Frost is going to get traded at some point. There's that feeling.
Well, I think, if he gets boxed out of this lineup, it very well could be. I certainly think they could get.
But do you think he should be boxed out of the lineup based on? Yeah, see, I don't either.
I really don't. I think that he just provides a valuable calmness at the center position that this team needs. And I think he can create some real strong offense. I think they missed him on the power play in the game against Vancouver. And I certainly hope he checks back in, especially against a team like the Edmonton Oilers, which is a perfect segue because that is who we'll be talking about coming up next.
Snap into action this NFL season with FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place a $5 bet. That's $200 in bonus bets, win or lose. If you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, there's no better time to get in on the action. The app is easy to use. There's a wide range of betting options, including spreads, player props, over-unders, and more. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and kick off the NFL season. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL.
Coming up on tomorrow's show, we will be, of course, recapping the game against the Oilers. And we'll get into some NHL general conversation as well to wrap up the week and see what's going on around the division. For the Edmonton Oilers tonight, they finally did win one against Nashville pretty handily, 6-1. Leon Draisaitl has the Preds number. This is just a running trend with him.
Well, the Preds defense really isn't what it used to be either.
That is also true. But Draisaitl had 2 goals and 2 assists in that game, in which he also set the record for the most power play goals for an Oiler at 127 overall. So that's pretty cool for him. Cool. Zach Hyman also had a goal and 3 assists in that game, and they chased Jase Saros out of the game, which is kind of a hard thing to do. And so I think that that was a pretty good statement game for the Oilers after losing.
The people that were counting them as dead based on, couple bad games. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that the Oilers, given the fact that they lost that first game 8-1, are in kind of a wackadoodle situation statistically around the league. It's going to take them a while for things to settle and, average out to the mean there. But they have the worst penalty kill so far in the league at 58.3%. They've got 5 goals against on 12.
So worst penalty kill against one of the worst power plays.
Yep. Yeah, but they are 4th in the NHL on the power play. 5 for 14. Obviously, with McDavid and Draisaitl, that's gonna
you don't want to
come naturally.
Power plays. We said that about Vancouver. It didn't go in for them, but still, you don't want to do it with Edmonton for sure.
No, not at all. But just again, because of these early season lack of a true sample size stats, it's still fun to dig into it just because, for a brief shining moment, you can say the Flyers are better than the Oilers in expected goals for percentage, in high danger chances for percentage. Does not make sense at all. But again, here we are in early season stats. I think the only thing that the Oilers, other than the power play, that really stood out to me is the Oilers are better at faceoffs, who isn't better than the Flyers at faceoffs.
Right. I mean, the Flyers were kind of, mediocre on faceoffs, even in a win last game. So I did listen to an interview with Jay Woodcroft on Sirius XM, and he was talking about, hey, it's great to have a big offense, but you do need to play defense. And so I think he is preaching that a lot with his team, and I think they're a little better defensively than they used to be. I've been looking at both teams, who they've been playing, how many shots they've been giving up, and I think both teams are going to get, and this is just shots on net, I think they're both going to get around 30. That's what I think. So it'll be interesting because, my my brain tells me if the Oilers are getting 30, they should be able to score on 3 at least. Like that's probably, based on the snipers that they have on their team. So I think the Flyers have to get 3 goals to win. I don't think they can win with 2 against Edmonton.
No, I don't think so either. I think that you're pretty spot on there. Yeah, I think, it's going to hover around 30 shots probably. Maybe it'll be like 32 to 28 like shots or something like that because this feels to me like a game where it's going to take the Flyers a little while to get a rhythm. And so they'll have one of those games where they get like 6 shots on goal in the first period, but by the time the third period rolls around, they'll be at 12 or something.
Right.
Like that's just kind of how they tend to cycle.
I think it'll be a little higher, but I think it's close to that. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's just kind of what they do against teams like the Oilers. I'm very intrigued to see what the Oilers do in terms of their forward lines because they have played with McDavid centering Evander Kane and Leon Draisaitl. That's what they did in the game against Nashville, but they have split McDavid and Draisaitl up before and had them on separate lines. And I just wonder if they're looking at the Flyers blue line and saying, that's a pretty weak blue line. So we can afford to split those guys up and maybe make it even harder for the Flyers defensively by having to have multiple pairings out there to cover both of those guys.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. I do. I think that's a very sensible take on that. So, yeah, I could see the divide and conquer thing. They could always go back to it, but, yeah, why not?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, seriously, why not? That second line is nothing to sneeze at with Ryan Nugent-Hopkins centering, and, they moved Zach Hyman onto that line. I believe they had Brown up on that top line before they switched Draisaitl.
They did because Brown used to play with the in the OHL with the Erie Otters with McDavid. So they could put him on the top line for that. That would give the Flyers problems because of the speed factor.
Yeah, absolutely. So that is the aspect of their lineup I'm probably the most interested in to see, what they do in terms of that strategy. But, they do have some depth offensively that maybe they didn't have in the past here. I do think that third line is pretty good.
Just looking cursory and what's in my mind, it seems like RNH has actually been one of the guys that victimizes the Flyers a little bit more than the others. They don't play him a lot, so there's not a lot of stats. But I think he's been pretty effective. So, yeah, I do kind of wonder if they're going to build up that second line.
Yeah, I do think that that's a distinct possibility. On the blue line side of things, again, this is where the Oilers tend to struggle a little bit. But I think they do have a better structure in place, even if they don't have the personnel that can execute it as well. But, Ekholm and Bouchard, it's like a solid but not great top
it's
pair.
Very good offensively, very good. And puck moving wise, very good.
But it's just defensively that they're not as good.
Yeah, Ekholm's the guy that has to make up for it. But Bouchard could be physical too. So, because he's a big guy. So there's a mix there that's not bad.
Yeah, and then Nurse and Cece are their second pairing. Again, that's like a pretty, I think, solid NHL second pairing.
Nurse does a lot of hard work. Cece, I think is doing a little better than some people thought he might. But I think in that role, and Nurse, he always wants to do well in Philly because he's McNabb's nephew, and so that's always going to follow him. So I could see him being very pumped up for the game.
Absolutely. I'm also interested to see who they put in net because Campbell got the win for them against Nashville, but theoretically Skinner is their number one goaltender.
Yeah, I think we're going to go with the guy who got the win, though. I just had that feeling.
You think?
I mean, just my guess. I don't really, it's going to be a game time decision, I'm sure. I don't think they're letting that out until like the morning skate.
Yeah, I would say so. You would think that Carter Hart is going to play against Edmonton. Yeah. I just don't see Erson getting a game until they have a back-to-back to deal with, or if there's like some sort of 4 games in a week situation where maybe they want to give Carter Hart one of those games off. But yeah, certainly not against the Edmonton Oilers. That's
no. And he plays well against Edmonton. That's his childhood team. So he's going to be pumped up for that as well.
Yeah, so what do you think the Flyers have to do other than score 3 or more goals in order to win?
I mean, they do have to do a lot of things they did yesterday, which at times I'm not sure what they were doing, but it was working. I think, like guys like Cates were playing well defensively. So I think some of the forwards did kick in some good defense there. I think, there was some toughness that was for sure. But, look, at the end of the game, especially when there was that last penalty, people were holding their breath on even with a 2-0 lead. Like it wasn't really safe. And they really, I would say, towards the end of the second and a good part of the third, it didn't seem like the Flyers even had an appetite to add on to it. They just kind of wanted to hold on to the lead. They can't do that against the Oilers because the Oilers can come back on you quickly. I think that's one of the bigger things is do not sit on this lead, and it's a bad idea if you get one.
Right. I think, the Flyers cannot turtle if they get a lead.
No.
They have to absolutely keep pushing at it. And
they got to be smarter with penalties. Like I think they got lucky with Konechny when he lunged at whoever that was yesterday. I forget with the Canucks, but I think he's got to do it at the right time. I'm not sure that was the right time because 4-on-4 was a little dangerous against the Canucks if you noticed because of the speed. The speed was evident all game, but they never really took advantage of it. But when they were 4-on-4, they're hard to handle. And so I think they have to be careful with that. And I'm sure there's going to be some baiting from the Flyers to Edmonton to try and get them into fights. But, again, just to point out like yesterday, they got Konechny off the ice for a long period of time compared to Sam Lafferty. Like that's a win for the Canucks, even though they didn't win the game. And that's something Konechny's got to think about.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. All right, well, we'll see how it goes tonight, and we'll be back tomorrow to talk about this one. In the meantime, we're going to check in with some of our prospects coming up next. So probably atop everybody's mind in terms of Flyers prospects and how they're doing so far is, of course, Matvei Michkov. And we know what happened with him getting loaned to Sochi. Mm-hmm. And I think that, he's done pretty well there so far. He was sick for a while, so he was out for a couple games, but he played Monday. Sochi is kind of an uneven team overall, but so they lost 5-2, but Michkov scored in that game, and he's a point per game right now, 6 goals, 7 assists in 13 games played.
Yeah, which is fine. I mean, again, I'm not so worried that I'm going to track him constantly. And I really want him to round out his game. I honestly don't care if he scores 75 points in their season. I don't really care about that. I know he's going to score points.
Yeah, I think that's a fair point in terms of rounding out his game. So that's something that you really need more time to take a look at as far as just tracking his progress. And of course, we will be doing that. Probably next on everybody's mind is Cutter Gauthier. Only 2 games into the college hockey season for him. We did mention that game-winning overtime goal that we saw, and that's his 1 goal of the season so far. He's played at the 1C position for both games. And that seems to be something that will continue until they decide that national team line gets maybe an official designation as the first line. But who knows if that'll even happen this year.
It could, but yeah, who knows? I think he's doing okay, but I think also you have to look at that with the lens of look at Macklin Celebrini, what he's doing with Boston University. A lot more points even in a couple of games than what Gauthier has, and he's much younger. So I think, you have to sort of, and he's like a potential, star in the league, and so is Gauthier. So I think you have to look at that and say, I need more. We know you have a great shot, but if you're going to play the center position, you got to get more points. You can't just be a goal guy.
Yeah, I think so. We'll see how he does over the next several games, and hopefully he'll increase scoring. You did mention Macklin Celebrini, so I'm going to skip ahead to Devin Kaplan because he's been playing on a line with him and Luke Tuck, which I think is honestly going to be – that's a really good line. Kaplan doesn't have any points so far. Again, only 2 games played into the season, but I would surmise that he'll get some if he stays on that line.
He will. And Luke Tuck's a pretty good player, too. He may have been a little overrated in his draft year, but I'd seen enough of him that he's pretty effective. And, yeah, Celebrini's got 3 goals already and 4 points. Like that, those are numbers, man. And that's – so Kaplan is really going to be the muscle on that line and looking to set those guys up. And Tuck can be really good around the net, and Celebrini's just really good.
Yeah. All right. Let's talk about our London boys in Denver, Barkey and Oliver Bonk. Barkey, man, we talked about him a little bit as well. 7 goals and 6 assists, 13 points. He's second in the OHL in scoring, tied with a bunch of people. Again, it's early going. So
I will say this. I know it's easy to look at the line and say, yeah, the numbers are great. There are some people that I know that cover that league. And of course, I only parachute in and look at the prospects. I don't watch enough games to know which teams are really, really super until I start talking to people. And so they still feel like his overall game has not been great, even though he's been scoring all these points. So that's a thing where I think that's something that he's got to focus on this year, because again, those points, when you're with the London Knights, they play a pro offense, you're in the OHL, you can get really big points. But there have been guys that have gotten really big points with London, and it hasn't translated well to the NHL. Some do, some don't.
And that's the opportunity you get when you've already been drafted, right? Is that some of that pressure is off to where now the pro team that you've been drafted by are saying, here's what you need to work on, and you work on those things. And if the scoring doesn't keep up with that, if that's not something they're worried about, I think that's okay. And I think everybody thinks that's okay.
Yeah, yeah, that's true.
Oliver Bonk has 6 assists so far. He's 15th in scoring in the OHL for defensemen, but that's not really his game per se.
It's not. I mean, and look, whatever he gets points-wise in the OHL, you can't expect that in the NHL, so that's fine. I would rather see him just sticking to what he's good at, and if he gets points, great, it's fine. But, his game is strong enough that I'm not that worried about the rest.
Yeah, just a couple of other guys. We're not going to get to everybody today, but we'll do more detailed profiles and check-ins as the season progresses. Just wanted to check in with Cole Knuble. He's played 3 games so far for Notre Dame, 5 shots on goal in the most recent loss, but no points on the board yet there. But I think he'll get into it. It's obviously his first season there, and so it's just going to take him a little bit of time. And then Carter Sotheran, who I thought was pretty impressive in Flyers camp. He's got 2 goals and 2 assists in 4 games played for the Portland Winterhawks. But he had a single game with a goal and 2 assists. So that was a good day for him. That led to most of those. That's a really good day.
That's good. Yeah. I think that's excellent.
Yep. So that was really good to see. And then for the goaltenders, of course, the 2 we're focusing on, Alexei Kolosov in the KHL playing for Dynamo Minsk. They've been highlighting him a lot on their social media, which probably has something to do with he's drafted.
Yes, they generally they do like pushing their goalies. For years, they push Shesterkin and Sorokin. I don't think Kolosov's at that level, but I can't tell you he's not because I'm not a goalie expert. But yeah, I could, he's one of the top goalies in the league. So he's going to get pushed.
Yeah, he's got a 2.01 goals against average, 925 save percentage so far. That's real good for him. So he's got 3 shutouts as well, which is, I believe, the highest in the KHL. There's maybe one other goaltender that has the same number of shutouts. But that is really, really good. So love to see that. Carson Bjarnasson back with Brandon. Again, they are a weaker team overall. Yeah. So it's really tough in front of him. But he does have a shutout this season. He's 3-3. But I think it's going to be a tough road. But I think that it's important. It's good character building, right?
It is good character building. I mean, his save percentage is good at 908. And honestly, that's all I care about. I'm going to add one more. I see that right now in 11 games, Ivan Fedotov is at a 909 save percentage. With a 2.20, this team's, he's got a 5-8 record. Look, I know there were super high expectations for him. it's probably hard for him mentally right now to be at that point where he was 2 years ago in this game.
Well,
So
especially after taking time off like that.
right. So this year may not be as stellar as what has been in the past. So I'm not going to mark him that harshly. And because again, I don't expect to see him for a little while. I think the Flyers may see him in the future, but I don't know when. So I just figured I'd update people because they're probably wondering.
Yeah, well, wasn't going to talk about him because I wasn't sure about the future, but it is a fair point. All right, that will do it for today's show. Of course, we will be back tomorrow recapping the game against the Oilers. Plus, the Flyers play the Stars over the weekend. So, we're going to talk about that one as well. As a reminder, we always want to hear from you. So, if you've got a mailbag question, send them in via Twitter at LockedOnFlyers. You can email us at lockedonflyers@gmail or comment over on YouTube. I am Rachel. I'm on Twitter at rmiriam. That's RMIRIAM.
I'm Russ. I'm at Sportsology, SPORTSOLOGY.
Have a great day, everyone.